Jr., also known as the Free HUGS Guy.
Thank you all for being here and supporting this message of peace and civility and love and being able to come together. It's just a really amazing sight to be standing here and looking onto the Washington Monument and knowing that behind me, Dr. Martin Luther King delivered his famous I Have a Dream speech, and it's just such an amazing experience. I'm looking forward to marching with you all. We've got some really amazing speakers here today, people who represent so many different sides and ethnicities and backgrounds, and we're all being able to stand here in support of peace. I look out, I see people wearing the Free HUGS t-shirts and the Restore Civility shirts, and this message is really important to me, you know, and I hope that it's important to so many of you that are here and to people that are around the world that are watching it live on C-SPAN today. I think it's a really amazing experience. So we'll get started with one of our first speakers. We've got a former Congressman, Jason Altmeyer, who literally wrote the book on how to conquer polarization in Washington.
This is the perfect place to have this event. We are surrounded by some of America's most significant memorials that have to do with what we're talking about here today. Right over there, the black granite wall inscribed with 58,000 names. That wall symbolizes a time in this country when we were deeply divided. A time when it appeared America was coming apart at the seams. A time when violence occurred. A time when anger turned into violence. Americans turned against one another. And it was at about that time that one of America's greatest heroes gave one of America's greatest speeches right here at this memorial. And on that day, 54 years ago, Dr. Martin Luther King stood here and told America we have a long way to go to achieve the civility, to achieve the peace, to achieve the unity and the equality that he knew was possible.
So our next speaker, the way that I found out about him, with a lot of the work that I've been doing on the front lines at riots and protests, I was tagged in a video that someone had posted online about this documentary on Netflix titled Accidental Courtesy. And because they had tagged me, I decided to watch the film, and I was so fascinated to see the work that this man was doing as a black blues player that somehow for the past 30 years has been spending so much of his life to cross over lines to befriend members of the KKK, to get them to give up their robes and renounce their membership in the KKK.
Well, good morning. It's a real honor and pleasure to be here. Well, let me start by saying welcome. Welcome to the March for Civility. And I've been walking this march now for about 30 years doing what I do. And a few things that I've found is this. We spend a lot of time in echo chambers, surrounding ourselves with other people who agree with us. So everything we say is reflected back to us, and it confirms our beliefs. And we exclude those who may have differences of opinion with us. What we need to do is begin to invite people to our table who may disagree. As Martin Luther King said, he had a dream that one day the sons of former slaves would sit down at the table of brotherhood with the sons of former slave owners. That's what we need to do. We need to come together. We spend a lot of time talking about each other or talking at each other. We don't spend enough time talking with each other. So I've been spending about 30 years meeting with neo-Nazis, KKK members, white supremacists, black supremacists, etc. And most of the times I do get a return visit. And as a result of these return visits, over time, you find things that you have in common. And if you nurture those commonalities, you begin to form a relationship. And as you form that relationship, the things that you have in contrast, such as skin color, religion, things like that, begin to matter less and less. And as you nurture that relationship, you begin to forge a friendship. And as a result, I've collected many robes and hoods and various neo-Nazi and KKK paraphernalia over the years. And I even have some of these people going out on lecture tours with me, speaking out against the evils of racism and discrimination. And they've aligned themselves with me and my embracing attitude. So what we need to do is we need to adopt an attitude of no longer can we say, I'm not my brother's keeper. Let's say we are our brother's keeper, because we all are brothers and sisters in this country. Thank you.
Moving on with Daryl Davis's message about crossing over to different lines. Many of you may have seen one of my most viral videos was as I was in the protests that were taking place in Charlotte last year. And there was a really special moment that was used in a Google commercial and a Cadillac commercial, where as I was walking by and trying to de-escalate a lot of the tension at this protest that was taking place, there's this giant police officer, and as I was walking by, he says, "Hey, bring it in, do I get one of those hugs?" And in that moment, I was really nervous because I had a group of protesters that were standing behind me that, you know, I was interacting with them, but I knew that in that moment they would see me as a traitor or a sellout because I crossed over to a different line and I hugged this cop. And I knew I was going to face some criticism for it, and almost immediately people are picking up rocks and bottles to try to throw at me and challenge me to a fight, all because I hugged this cop. Share with them kind of what was going through your head, because a lot of people think that I just walked up to him and hugged him because I'm the free hugs guy. I actually, in that moment, was kind of scared to hug him because he's in full riot gear, he's got his weapon with him, and he's just big, and he has a bunch of his cop buddies all standing next to him, and I didn't know what was going to happen, especially because there's tear gas in the air, it was just a chaotic night. And I was shocked that he actually asked for that hug in that moment, and people thought that that was me that initiated that, but it was actually him. And so tell them kind of what was going through your head in that moment.
I mean, it's kind of weird. These
Here, let me lift that up. Here, I might.
Oh,
here we go. All right.
No, in that moment it was going since Tuesday night, and I got 3 hours of sleep. We were in the city, we were bruised, beaten, and trying to help the citizens just take the city back. And when we finally got a break, I saw Ken walk with his free hug shirt, and I recognized him from his Dallas video, and I recognized his work, and I always wanted to meet him, so I just yelled out of spontaneous, just yelled out, "Where's my free hug?" And he looked at me with this puzzled look of, "Seriously? I gotta hug this big guy? He smells, he probably has all this gas all over him." So he came over and he gave me a hug, and we started talking, and it opened those communication bonds between protesters, police, him, and they're more willing to listen to him because I'm sitting there in riot gear and I look a little scary. So they were listening to him, they were understanding, and it brought peace for that one moment in our city, and it really helped out.
Ken used the phrase unlikely friendships, and I'm going to come back to that phrase as I talk. But both what we heard from Daryl, what we heard from Chris and Ken, is about the real extremes in our society where words have already turned into violence. There's no hope of us ever holding the people accountable at the other end of this wall for being civil to each other. This is now like a virus in our country. Democracy has always been a conversation. The quality of that conversation is what matters.
So to continue with now this message of unlikely friendships, I would love to talk about the man who made a lot of this happen. You know, I think a lot of people think that it was all me, and it's really not. You know, to be able to have met such a friend that I had traveled to speak at his company, Aegis Living, and you've seen the logos in some of these places here. I know he's got quite a crew here as well. And Dwayne Clark is just a phenomenal man. I mean, I didn't know what to expect when I went to go and speak at his company, but the culture that he had there at that company, just how much everyone loved each other and respected each other. I thought they had been wearing free hug shirts the whole time, even before I even got there to that place, because everyone just was hugging each other and loving one another. And in getting to meet him, when I traveled there, you know, I'm thinking, oh, he's a rich CEO, you know how they are. But this guy was different. I mean, that first night after speaking at his conference, he asked me to go to dinner with he and his wife. And I went to hang out with them. It was the first time I ever cruised in a Rolls Royce, by the way. This guy's car collection is insane. And, you know, to know that myself growing up in and out of homeless shelters and on Section 8 and the way that my family struggled, I never could have imagined that type of a lifestyle where I hop in his Lamborghini one day, I hop in his Rolls Royce one day and just see the way that he lives. You would never think that a person like he and myself would have this genuine friendship. But really, to be able to make this happen, as many of you guys can see, this stuff costs to be able to produce. And he teamed up with a bunch of his friends and co-workers and people that he felt really would connect with this message, and he got them all to rally behind it and support it. And that's how we were able to make a lot of this happen financially. And so Dwayne's gonna come up, and I just can't tell you how much I love you and I respect you for everything that you've done to help me out, Dwayne.
Hello, Civility ambassadors! It's hot as Hades up here. If tomorrow wasn't promised, what would you do today? What would you spend today thinking about? How would you treat your fellow man? What would your legacy to this world be? That's right, your legacy. We're not here just marking time. Our actions are significant. What would we do? What would we say? How would we treat one another? It all matters. My mother would talk to me about the success that I would have in this country because of the opportunity I had, because of the people that we have in this country. That if I applied myself and were kind to all people, no matter what their race was, no matter what their beliefs were, that I would be successful. So in closing, I ask you again, if tomorrow wasn't promised, how will you spend today? How will you treat your fellow man? What will your legacy to civility be? What did your mother teach you about civility? God bless you.
So our next speaker, so many of you are probably familiar with him. I know when every time I log on to Instagram and different social media accounts, there's this cop that I see in Arkansas, and he's always out there and he's interacting with the students. And you can tell that he works in some pretty underserved neighborhoods, and you just see his love and his passion for the people that are in that community.
Thank you, Ken. It's a big honor to be here, and thank you also to your wife, Sabrina. Congratulations on the upcoming new additions to the family. You know, give them a big hand. When I think about peace, growing up in North Little Rock, Arkansas, family of 9. I'm actually a twin myself, and we're the youngest. My mom always taught us to love each other and to love others, even if that meant that we had to do without. Early on in my career as a police officer, I always wanted to go into neighborhoods with open arms, to love people, because that's what my mom always taught her 9 kids. And as you know, mom knows best. And so I was a little reluctant at first because I always thought that all police officers did was write tickets and make arrests. I didn't know that police officers can hug people and can love people and can get out of their police cars and really form relationships. So I tried it, and I wasn't really sure if it was working. I mean, fast forward to 2001, my shift had just ended at 2 p.m. A gentleman in Little Rock, which is right across the river from North Little Rock and is our capital city in the state of Arkansas, and he wanted to meet with me. He didn't tell me what he wanted. And so I go and I meet with him. He's at a gas station off Interstate 30, and he wanted to confess to a murder. It actually killed a man in a homeless camp with a 2x4. And so I called Little Rock police. They come over, they get out of their police cars, and they look at me and they ask me, "How did you find this guy?" And I told the officers I didn't find him, he found me. And so they put him in handcuffs, very peaceful arrest. They put him in back of their patrol car. And before they drive off with him, I asked the gentleman, why me? Why a police officer? You've never even met a police officer that works for another police agency, why did you choose me? Just my luck. The plane flies over when I speak. But he told me that word on the street that there was a police officer in a neighboring city that he could surrender to with dignity and respect. So that wasn't really a transformation for me. It was more of a confirmation that as a police officer, your badge should have a heartbeat and not an ego. It's one of my daughters. I'd like to say peace and blessings. I would first like to thank the families back at home in the streets of St. Louis for their constancy, dedication, and determination. Today is 7 days of civil obedience. I stand in solidarity. No justice, no profit. Our country is up under the state of emergency until Black Lives Matter. To say all lives matter is ridiculous. United we stand, divided we fall. As we all come together to the table in peace and unity for justice and equal. It is best to work with the Martin Luther King of this era or deal with the Malcolm X of this era.
Okay, so we are about to do the actual March for Peace, which I'm definitely very, very excited for. And then after that, we're going to do my speech. I'm going to practice while we're doing the march. I'm really, really nervous-sided for this.
Who have you seen speak so far today?
Oh, I got tons of people. I've seen Daryl Davis, who is so amazing. Michael Brown Sr. Ken spoken a few times. Who else has spoken? There were so many people. I don't know all of
Tommy
their names.
Norman.
Yes, Tommy Norman did speak, and he was really amazing. And then a ton of people whose names I didn't know, but they were fantastic speakers. This has been a really great opportunity and experience so far.
You're up next? After the march? All right, let's go to our practice.
And today, Mr. Bobby Seale, one of the co-founders of the Black Panther Party, is here today.
Civility. I think of civil rights, civil human rights. Civility. I think of the first 2-3 paragraphs in the Declaration of Independence of the United States of America. A lot of people look at that and don't pay attention to it and see what it means. I started an organization in 1966 while I was working for the city government of Oakland, California in the Department of Human Resources. The year preceding that, a book came out called Black Power by Kwame Ture, then known as Stokely Carmichael, and some others. And they was hollering Black Power and had youth saying, we want Black Power, we want Black Power. And I was standing on the corner listening to them, and I walked up to them and I said, you're not going to get any power until you take over some of these political seats. What do you mean political seats? I said city council seats, supervisorial seats, the city council, stuff like that. Oh, them the white man seats. I said, you better try to make them some black folk seats. I said, because that's where the power is. These people make laws, these people use the money, they exploit you, do not deal with your basic desires and needs, etc., etc., etc.
Hello, can everyone see me? I hope you guys can. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much to Ken and his team for giving me the opportunity to speak here today, and that I really love what's happening at this event. Usually, I say that the people that come to an event like this one aren't the people that need to hear the message, because they all already agree with one another. But here, everyone almost certainly disagrees in some way with someone speaking on the stage. And I think it's pretty cool that we can all come together and talk about being civil to one another even if we disagree, and then we don't have to hate each other just because we disagree. It can be scary to see hate surging in our country, but I like to think of it as the death throes of hate. There's less hate in my generation than there was in the last one, and there'll be even less in the next generation. It's amazing to see what can happen if we just take the time to get to know each other. And there are kids that are being taught hate, but there are more of us than there are of them. And later, some of those kids will become my friends, and they'll change their minds, just like the work that Daryl Davis is doing. Of course, we won't always agree, But usually what makes us different is what makes us interesting, and it's nothing to be afraid of. It's really scary to see the hate surging in our country, but it's a lot less scary if you think of it as the dying gasps of hate losing this battle, rather than hate taking over our country. That being said, these dying breaths and the resurgence of hate isn't something we can ignore. To quote the Hamilton musical, there's a revolution coming in this century. It's not hard to feel that. And revolutions aren't bloodless, but there are already people out there who are willing to fight those battles. I'm here because I want to be sure this revolution is less bloody than the last one, and to make sure that we're all setting the foundation for us to come together on the other side. And I'm so glad there are so many other people here that feel the same way. I'm also here because I want to represent hope for the future. I promise that the work you all are doing now will be in good hands in the years to come. And I promise that me and my friends will continue to stand up for what we believe in, but that we will do so without hate and without violence. And with the hope that if we all come together, we can make real change and we can create the world that we want to live in. Thank you all so much again for inviting me out here and hearing me out, and let's all work together to make the world a better place.
Blows my mind every time she speaks.
Restore civility. That's why we're here. I want to tell you that one person can make a ripple for bad or for good. I flew here from Overland Park, Kansas, where 3.5 years ago, my father and my son were fatally shot in a religious hate crime. In April 2014, a 73-year-old man claiming to be a white supremacist murdered my father and my 14-year-old son at a Jewish community center. He then left that community center and went to another Jewish location and murdered another woman, Terry Lamano.
This image here, it's so powerful to be able to see people that all have really strong stories and experiences and different things that we've all gone through in life, and we represent so many different groups and organizations and ethnicities and racial backgrounds and religions and genders, where we're all able to stand here together in peace and unity and love. And this is amazing, just looking at you guys. Young people, old people, well, seasoned people. I don't like to call old people. Ciele, she's an old spot. But I just love it. Tall people, short people, we're all in this together. We're all spreading love, and we're hoping that this can be a symbol of unity. And that was the goal today, was just to be able to make a bold statement that we're all in this together. And we look at all of the division happening in the world, and it tears us apart. And it's, I've shared with some of the officers as we were marching how much I appreciated them marching out here with us, and you rarely see that. And so many times at these protests, it seems like the numbers are so huge when it's a divisive message, but when the message is a call for us to all come together, that those numbers aren't the way they are during so many of these other protests. And so this is just a call to action for people who are watching this around the world to come together in their own communities and in their schools and in their workplace, for us to all show that we don't have to hate one another, we don't have to be divided as a nation, that we're all in this together. Thank you all for watching. Cool. Thank you. Awesome. Cool. All right, we're good.
Can we give it up one more time for Ken?
Oh,
Very nice project for making this happen.
Turn this march into a movement.
Yes, yes, we love that. Thank you. All right, we're good. Thank you guys, appreciate you. Thanks.